welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTB World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to the economic situation in Pakistan, and of course, what is going to be the future course of action, particularly when we talk about the end of the standby arrangement with the IMF and entering a new extended fund facility with the IMF. Of course, this is something that is extremely important to the way that things have been running in the country for the past year or so, and the way that economic challenges have increased and tough measures have had to be taken by not only the caretaker setup, but also, of course, the previous tenure of the PDM-led government. And so this is going to be something very challenging for the new government that is going to be taking shape in the country after the elections this year. And what exactly will then unfold in terms of the negotiations? We remember that last year, just on the last day of the end of the fiscal year, we did manage to secure the standby arrangement, which was a huge victory for the then PDM-led government, and of course the then Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, who's also of course expected to take the role again this time around as well. And so great expectations will be there from him this time around as well in terms of his negotiations and his team's negotiations with the IMF. But what exactly will this involve, and how exactly will the planning phase continue while we take the political uncertainties into account, while we take global challenges into account, and the fact that Pakistan and the different political parties who will now be part of the new setup are going to be engaging with each other, and how equipped the team is going to be with regards to financial matters, and then of course the upcoming budget as well, and other challenges in terms of strengthening their political stronghold as well, is going to of course continue to exist. And so we're going to be taking a look at all of these measures and try and understand then how exactly will this extended fund facility and its negotiations will begin, and what sort of planning is required. We've been talking about this previously as well, and it seemed that that perhaps was something that needed to be in place long before, perhaps is on a certain level, but how substantial that is, of course, is something that we'll explore further in the show today. Our next segment is also going to be taking a look at what is going on around the world, particularly in terms of the foreign relations that Pakistan has, and its foreign accountability and responsibility to what is going on around the world. And we're very happy to, of course, see that Pakistan has also entered the number of countries, more than 50, I believe, that have joined in the efforts to call on the ICJ with regards to what is going on in Palestine and the genocidal acts that Israel has been committing in the area, and of course the unlawful settler policy that Israel has with regards to the Gaza Strip and the people of Palestine. And Pakistan, of course, has always stood by the stance of a two-state solution in accordance with the aspirations of the people of Palestine, and of course is again within the ICJ putting forward similar stance and rejecting the settler policy of Israel, claiming that it's unlawful, and of course has been calling for an end to the hostilities that have been going on for so long, in which more than about 36,000 people have unfortunately lost their lives, many of whom are children and women. And so this is something that we'll explore further in terms of what this particular case is going to entail, how successful will it be in terms of calling out genocide committed by Israel, and in terms of putting that pressure that is needed. Of course, we know that the ruling will not be binding, but with the increase in pressure and the number of countries joining in, what impact would that create, and then what role Pakistan will be able to play in this regard to make sure that the case is brought forward and that there is more substance to it and more pressure that can be exerted. So we're going to be exploring that in detail in our next segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi. Today we haven't been joined by Raja Faisal, but we wish him good luck, and I think he's enjoying a wedding right now, so more power to him. We've also been joined online by Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, senior economist, who's joined us on our first segment, where we're going to be looking at Pakistan's efforts towards economic challenges that, of course, have been persisting for quite some time now, and Pakistan to seek another $6 billion in a new IMF program. Thank you, Dr. Khaqan, for joining us, and I'll start with you. Of course, you are in-house and are a regular financial expert who explains the situation to us and helps us understand what is going on and what is needed. And so once again, when we talk about moving the IMF once again, seeking another IMF program, and of course with regards to the new government that we're also expecting, how do you see current level of preparation that Pakistan has in terms of doing so, and future prospects of being able to do that with, of course, the new government coming up as well?
So, Sana, whenever I've spoken to you, and you remain my witness along with Pitafi Saab, I've always said Pakistan's functioning without the IMF is an uncomfortable thing to do, and we should not go that way. The nation must remember that in June, when we were not going through with the IMF's ninth review of the program, which ended incomplete, reserves had fallen under $3 billion, which have now picked up to near $8 billion after the fund program came in. Multilateral money is flown. Pakistan's bilaterals gave money. Pakistan's friendly countries rolled over. Pakistan's rupee strengthened. Pakistan's state bank could pick up money from the interbank market as remittances also improved. We cracked down on the dollarization happening outside the interbank market. So, a number of things happen. But the primary function of IMF is to create macro stability in a country with a balance of payments challenge, and that's what happened. Pakistan now is at a critical juncture on the IMF. This is an interim 9-month program which is going to end with the interim government. So it was planned to end on April 12th, 2024, and I think that is how it will be. The fund has waited to do the second or the last review of $1.1 billion with the from the caretakers. Rather, they've moved on to the incoming government, and fair enough, that's the way they think. So, Sana, one thing to remember: this was an easier program. It was a interim standby arrangement, not a full-fledged program. So it relied on monetary tightening on the inflation. It relied on price hikes. It relied on exchange rate to stay market based and some fiscal adjustment, and that through easier taxation rather than making any drastic changes. And that's how we have been. I mean, just see the last structural benchmark, the 15th February structural benchmark. And I tweeted to, push the government or help the government, create an atmosphere for the gas price hike of 67% on the average, because that was a structural benchmark with the IMF. Pakistan's economy, now where it stands, here's my best and on a lighter note, good advice. The Prime Minister should have someone walk into his office and give him a brief. All the CMs should do the same. An honest opinion and a person who's not going to be working under him. That's really, really how I think things should proceed. And the person should tell him, without the IMF, we can't move forward. But doing an IMF program, and here's Pitafi Saab, my new twist, where I've been always saying, do the IMF, but
Yeah.
here's something I'm going to say which is very different. If you want to do the IMF, which is a necessity given the international architecture, prepare yourself, do an honest diagnostic of the economy, make a macro fiscal framework for the next 3 years, decide what you want to do on the taxation, and not by just raising GST, regulatory duties, custom duties. This is what we've been doing. This is what the IMF has gone through with us. Rather than go to the fund and say, I want to make taxation easier in this country, rather than hiking the price on the power sector, go to them and tell them that this is not something we want to do. We want to do the work that brings down the price as we move along in the 3 years. Privatization, tariff reform, targeting of subsidies, privatization of GENCOs along with the DISCOs. So, a host of other things. IPP renegotiation. So tell them that these are the benchmarks we are looking at. Make the program thoroughly structural in nature. Make the IMF help you to get the basics right, the fundamentals right. If you again go to the IMF, reliant on the IMF to do all this work, then
Yeah.
the buy in of the local folks, all the political parties, the establishment, military and civil, and some things go challenged in the judiciary will
Right.
happen. But if you have a homegrown plan, you go to everyone, get a larger, a general kind of a buy in, bring the program to the nation, tell them what is about to happen, create that narrative. That will shift the fact that 21 programs Pakistan has left incomplete. There's only one program that Pakistan has completed, the 1316 one, and I know that for a fact because the same government PMLN was leading, and I was part of the fundamental team where we ran this program. Now
Right.
that ball is now at the court of the new government, and good
Absolutely.
luck to them.
Right. Dr. Saab, I'm glad that you actually came up with this proposal regarding Prime Minister actually bringing in somebody who is not going to work under him. I want you to actually thrash it out further, because usually what happens is that when government comes and you're talking about the apex position in the country, chief executive's office, then what happens is that usually apart from the finance ministry, there is an economic council that gives advice to the prime minister. And this actually becomes a problem also, because you end up adding too many people who might have very different opinions, and in the end, and we saw an army chief being included some years ago in that as well. Can you help us explain what will be the modalities of this proposal, because it seems very interesting. And bear in mind that every time we go to IMF, we call the package that we go for as a homegrown package, but in a sense it becomes other way around, as you pointed out. So what will be different this time, sir?
So, I think the first is the realization that people call it the IMF program in Pakistan. And, this talk that I'm doing, I never do it on other channels, because you guys are part of the government. You have seen the government functioning much more closely than a lot of people in the private sector who have not had that chance. So you understand, you know the councils, you know the working of the government. So number
Dr.
one, this
Khaqan,
is
I
not
think you should just come out with the truth. You just like us the best. We're your favorites. That's why you do that.
That goes without saying, Sana. So here's the thing, right? Now, people call it the IMF program. First of all, it is a Pakistan program supported by a fund facility. If you think about it like that, right, Pitafi Saab? So operationally, everything changes. It is not an IMF program. When you sign every document, it says Pakistan's program supported by the IMF facility. So make it Pakistan's program this time. So where are we? So you need fiscal experts to write you a fiscal framework of Pakistan. So in the next 3 years, how are we going to come down from right now the federal fiscal deficit? And I am not saying that. The finance ministry has just put out a communique where they want to pick up a certain amount of money. 8,500 billion rupees is what they want as federal fiscal deficit this year. Now, that means that this will take our federal fiscal deficit to nearly 8% of GDP. So where is our federal fiscal framework to bring it down from 8 to 6 to 5 to maybe 4 in the next 3 years? So let's have that federal fiscal framework. Someone who understands how to do this on the expenditure cuts, on the taxation side, the changes that are required. So when you go to the IMF, they will be surprised, right? They'll say, you've already done the work that we do with you. So is this the way you want to go? So that is the first way to think about it. Number two, on the energy side, because Pakistan's program is primarily hanging around the fiscal, the energy, and the third one, the monetary. I want to add a new twist to it as well. So on the energy side, rather than saying, we want to hike the price, that's the easiest thing. The structural benchmark, hike the gas price, hike the PDL. These are really easy things to do. People say raising prices is easy. Pitafi Saab, that's the easiest thing to do. NEPRA sets the price, you go and hike it. You're going to do that anyway. The key is, how do you manage the price hike so that it comes down to sustainable levels? That's the program that the energy sector people have to give us. So the energy sector people tell us that in the power sector, in the next 3 years, this is how we are going to play out. These can be the indicative targets on the circular debt coming down from the 2,700 billion rupees, not going up, but coming down. The flow, let's say it's 500 billion rupees right now. I don't know what the exact flow will turn out, but this is the number coming. How will we reduce this to 300, to 200, and then to manageable 100 billion or so, which will continue? So now when I go to the IMF, I have a different mindset. I am not saying to them that we will add this much circle debt. I am saying this is the surgical treatment I want to give to my economy. This is my indicative target to you. My structural benchmark, I will sell ISCO in June 2025, or I will sell HESCO June 2026. Be clear on this. I want to do a targeted subsidy regime where I give 1,000 billion rupees in subsidy, major going to the power sector. I am going to take that away and put it in the income support program. You can call it BESP, income support, SARS, what do you? It's the same program every government has worked through. 10 million households. I want to increase that to 15 million households. Thinking differently.
Right. And that is a good point, sir, with your permission,
Yes.
Sanaa. Apologies, I don't want to hog all the attention, but I have some questions that are really serious for me. Dr. Saab, regarding, going to IMF and seeking up some kind of bailout or some kind of program. Now, the question that one keeps on coming back to is the high debt to GDP ratio. And that actually takes us to the question of reprofiling. In the past, we have actually spoken about that. But do you think that a program, this extended fund facility, without reprofiling is also possible?
So I really hope someone's listening to your program. So I have just finished writing a paper. A lot of people talk about the word restructuring of Pakistan's debts. I have consistently said Pakistan is a case of reprofiling and not debt restructuring, because debt restructuring is not something, given the ambit of our external debt, which the public sector holds. I have just finished a paper which is titled Pakistan's External Debt Sustainability. So you're absolutely on the dot. Pakistan's public debt is only sustainable if it is underpinned by prudent policy adjustments of both the stock and the flow. So the other way people are saying is that it's an unsustainable debt, but I'm saying debt is sustainable only if you underpin it by the flow and the handling of the stock. So what are your options? I think reprofiling, which is lengthening of the maturities while keeping principal and interest payments intact and our sovereignty intact, is Pakistan's preferable option with the bilateral partners, and appropriate other actions with the multilaterals, which means if we are going to give back $4 billion to multilaterals, we put up projects worth $6 billion, which is a long-term, cheap debt, 25-year, 5-year grace period. Commercial creditors, we slowly bring down the commercial creditors, and that is expensive money, so we take that out. Then Pakistan's, here's the trick, people don't think about it. $10 billion we went to Geneva. So Pakistan is the most ripe case where we say debt for development and environmental swaps. You want to spend so much money on the flood victims, ask your bilateral partners that this is going to be a swap that we do. So now we start thinking about our external debt, lengthening maturities, getting Pakistan's debt for development and environmental swaps. Things start to change. So again, put a team together which can exactly make this. I've just done the 5-year analysis on Pakistan. It's very, very easy to see who is owed where and how these different things can be handled. And then you also show, then what will happen is when you go to China or when you go to Saudi Arabia, when you go to multilaterals, they will ask you, okay, if you want to do that, what's your homegrown plan? Then you tell them, for debt sustainability flow issue, I'm going to fix my fiscal deficit so my borrowing comes down. If my borrowing comes down, my debt profile increase will come down. And I'm serious on that. And here's my program. Here's my program on the NFC award. And this imbalance between the provinces and between the federal government, here's how I'm going to fix it. Now you say that, just last one point, I'm going to privatize and I'm going to get dollar-denominated inflows. This is my strategy. Things start to happen for Pakistan. I don't know if we can put the team together to do this.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, whenever you're here on the show and you talk about what strategies or measures are needed, it seems that there is a path at least clear, a direction at least clear, or steps that need to be taken, and you make it sound straightforward. And I'm sure it's not, but at least the direction is there in terms of what needs to be done. And so the question that always comes to my mind is, why isn't it being done? or why aren't the people who are actually then responsible of taking this action are not doing it? Is it because there are different approaches to the same problem, or is it because they don't know any better, or is it because they're unwilling or incapable? What really is the reason that while we talk to economists and experts and on TV shows, they have an answers to our questions, but the people who actually are deciding, they apparently don't.
And do we even know who is going to do it now?
So, Sana, when we used to do our O-level exams and our A-level exams, the multiple choice question had a answer A, B, C, and D. The D was all the above.
All of the above. So, I see. Right.
So I've got to go with that. On the serious note, and answering Pitafi Sahab, here's a triangle. At the top of the triangle is democracy. On my left of the triangle is bureaucracy. On my right of the triangle is technocracy. This technocracy has gone missing from all our ministries, from Planning Commission, from the key ministries which have to do policy. So they've all become, instead of policy think tanks, they've all become administrative think tanks. Or you can call administrative operationalizing things. Call the disco, ask them, bring down your losses, and then time goes away. So I think one part is that we have to realize that in a generalist setup, we've gone missing on the technocracy. On the other part is that I think technocrats themselves have found it hard to find a place within the government circles, and when they do, they are overwhelmed and overswept by the paraphernalia around them. So where they can put things together, but to push them in the government has become difficult. And that's why IMF wins from you. They bring in 11 PhDs. Everyone's a sector specialist. Everyone's got a PhD from Johns Hopkins, MIT, worked on Jordan, worked on Egypt, arrived in Pakistan. Now, here's your team, which I hope this time the state will come with the kind of preparation. But again, who will and how will, that question remains. If we can, muster the support of some policymakers on these sectoral issues to come up with these things. I don't think we've still done that. But now instead of just advocating an IMF program, here's the deal we are advocating: how to put together an IMF program, which is a country ownership program, and where to take it in the next 3 years, how to keep changing it. This is the very, very difficult part. If it was easy, we would have not come out of 21 programs incomplete. We would have gotten some of them complete. Now, and I find it in the politically charged environment, it's going to be even more difficult to do, because there will be harsh decisions. And those are not that we will increase the price of PIA's fare. Those will be, PIA will be split. PIA will be handed over. PIA will be having many areas closed. PIA employees some would find jobs, some would need a handshake. These are the tough calls that would need to be made. I don't know if we can really make them without the quality of work that I'm suggesting to you. The reason I'm being a bit more blunt today is that I think time has come, and I see people reeling in inflation over the decades where we've not been able to do these steps. I think it's a wake-up call for all of us. And of course, the responsibility with the new government to do all this work.
Right, and Dr. Khaqan, building on what Farrukh said in terms of who's leading the team, and of course we've seen previously as well that a lot of credit was also given to the previous Prime Minister before the caretaker setup. Mr. Shehbaz Sharif was of course taking charge again in terms of the government, that he was able to secure the SBA right at the very end, but his role contributed a lot. And then of course with the team that was also leading the Finance Ministry, of course we saw a couple of changes on that note. But right now, moving forward with this team, especially in terms of the way that we've seen election results come in, the way that this is a coalition government once again, how much do you think will this impact then the way that we move forward with the IMFs and the way that the team will be formulated with regards to the Finance Ministry, and how this will then be different in terms of what the caretaker setup has continued to do, and how we will be able to ensure there is continuity in policy?
So finance, energy, privatization, investment, all these teams would make a lot of sense if they were to have people who understand public finance, who understand, the three sectors, gas, petroleum, and power, and understand it where they can deregulate, get private efficiency in, get policies which can find traction. investment teams which can not only help SIFC get foreign direct investment, but also, do the real regulatory guillotine, regulatory cleanups in Pakistan. A team at the Privatization Commission, get a chairperson who understands how mergers and acquisitions work, how privatizations work, so he can or she can prepare all these assets for privatization. I really think beyond the finance team, all these teams would make a lot of impact if we were able to. Then get someone to centrally coordinate this work, because that coordination function would be, I think, the linchpin between what we are doing here and what the IMF is expecting here. So, we sink in all this in a homegrown setup with the IMF. If really we can do what all we've talked about today, Pitafi Saab, I think Pakistan in 3 to 5 years would start looking different. That doesn't mean that everyone will find a job, but at least people would start to see that there is a reversal of the downfall that we've been having, of the reliance we've been having on multilaterals, to something that we've done ourselves. And that would give a lot of comfort to people who I think today are feeling a little hopeless and want to, see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan Najeeb, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. It's a pleasure having you, as always, in the debate, and we hope that we're able to talk about better times moving ahead. Farrukh, with regards to, of course, the political setup and its impact, especially on the economic front, there is the role of the new setup that's going to be there, but what about the role that the opposition parties also need to be playing in this regard?
Right. Shoulda, coulda, woulda is out of the window. Right, and I'm saying this because Imran Khan Sahab has apparently written a letter to IMF, right? This party does not need any enemy. They keep on helping themselves further down in the ditch, right? And that letter to IMF, apparently this is regarding, fund not cooperating with Pakistan in case there is not full accountability or audit of the elections. So that is how it is reported, and how repeatedly Khan Sahab statements coming from him are attributed to him, right? And the biggest problem is that these people don't understand that there is a significant difference between what happened before the elections and what happens after the elections. Before elections, when the country had to go for SBA, at that time their officials actually met with IMF. Actually, IMF's officials met with PTI officials also, so that there is some kind of measure of assurance that those policy reforms will be actually carried out no matter who comes to power after elections. Now, after elections, we have the arithmetic of the new parliament, and now we know that PTI is not needed in formation of government. So that issue is totally now gone. If a PTI thinks that their letter is going to complicate things for Pakistan, it might a little, because it is embarrassing that somebody is writing to international bodies against own state. But apart from that, I don't think that that is going to be an issue, because IMF does not deal in electoral, transparency and all. Their main concern is regarding the economic stability, and they are going to talk to whatever government is there, provided there is some measure of stability. And now we know, because of the numbers, that whichever government is formed, especially given that People's Party and PMLN are going to be so intertwined in government formation, that it will be stable, and because it is going to be stable government, they are going to deal with it. Unfortunately, somehow they have once again, PTI has once again scored an own goal, and this is not all. I mean, a few days ago I was talking to you about malice and about meanness, and I just wanted to point out that once again they have done it. They have sacked their own chairman of the party, and then somebody, his immediate subordinate actually comes to on the media and calls him a weak man. Who does it to their own team, right? If you have this spirit of meanness, who is going to help you? I don't think anybody is. So right now, opposition or no opposition, the government is going to carry on with the burden, and I think that We still have to wait and see who becomes the finance minister.
Right.
But after that, things are going to look up.
Hopefully, of course, that is what we're looking forward to, and we hope that that is the case. We're also now going to be taking a look at what is going on internationally, and especially with regards to Pakistan's role, with regards to what is going on in the ICJ against genocidal acts that Israel has been committing against Palestine. So we're taking a closer look at what sort of contribution Pakistan has made and how that will help, and what then are the legal aspects that are going to be involved. We've been joined online by Mr. Ahmer Bilal Soofi, who's a legal expert. Thank you very much, Ahmer Sab, for being part of the discussion. Welcome to the debate. First of all, I would like your perspective and helping us understand what stance has Pakistan put forward to? We know that the statement that has been put forward by our representative in the ICJ, and of course Pakistan has called out the Israeli settler policy, also of course reiterated its stance on the two-state solution, then of course the end of ceasefire. But specifically when we talk about genocide and acts of genocide that Israel has committed, how will this role contribute towards that aspect that, of course, is being taken a look at in the court's proceedings?
Well, thank you very much. Basically, Pakistan has also participated alongside several other countries because when you have a proceedings of this nature, there are two distinct proceedings that are being undertaken in the International Court of Justice. One relates to genocide, which has been invoked by South Africa, and the other one is relating to the legality of the occupation and its consequential actions. Pakistan has participated in the proceedings, and with the intent and with the clarity, which historically the state of Pakistan has held that position, that Israelis' occupation is against international law of West Bank and Gaza, and therefore they are not entitled to the nature of activities which they are doing or which they consider themselves entitled in terms of committing war crimes and in terms of extraordinary suppression of the Palestinians. So Pakistan has taken this position all along, and Pakistan maintains this position, and it has stood by Palestinians throughout in all international forums. It has supported the cause of Palestine state, and it has supported the cause of self-determination of the people of Palestine because of its similarity with the Kashmir issue under international law. So Pakistan has reiterated that same position through its representative and its interim law minister now in these proceedings, in which Pakistan addressed the court for half an hour and reiterated the same positions that under international law, the right of occupation does not, even if that is a regime of occupation, does not entitle Israel to commit war crimes of the nature and the magnitude that it has committed, whether under the pretext of self-defense or reprisal or whatsoever may be the justification attempted, that should not be accepted by international judicial forums. So that's been the position of Pakistan consistently, and this is what it has reiterated.
Right. Ahmer Sab, help me understand. You started off by pointing out two aspects, the aspect of occupation and then the aspect of genocide. Can you please clarify for me that Pakistan is putting up the stance within the court with regards to occupation and not genocide, or both?
No, both. Let me be clear. The Pakistan's official position is that occupation is unlawful, and even whether you are able to occupy, it does not give you a license to commit a genocide.
Right.
And any kind of move that you are doing against civilians, unarmed population of Palestinians, children, old people, non-combatants, they are prohibited under international law. In general international law relating to human rights, and under specific international law relating to law of armed conflict that regulates the conduct of hostilities. So on both accounts, there is a serious and a grave violation that has been committed by the Israeli forces, and it is now being globally recognized as such. And that is the reason why when South Africa took this matter under Genocide Convention to International Court of Justice, they granted an interim order whereby they asked Israel to abstain from committing any acts of genocide. So that was a clear recognition that at a global level, all
but that
get.
interim order, if I can also get your legal view on that, talked about acts of genocide and any sort of genocidal acts that Israel should refrain from, but did not outrightly also claim that Israel is committing genocide. Is that because that is still under consideration?
No, I think they relied, the International Court of Justice relied on documentation that has been presented in United Nations, including the report of the Secretary General, that identified that the offenses and the actions that constitute grave breaches are genocidal in nature. They also presented before the court the statements from the government of Israel, from its officials, which made obvious the intent to commit a genocidal framework. So I think there is no doubt that there was a prima facie case made out in the judgment of the court when it passed the interim order that genocide should be prevented.
Right. Soofi Saab, I'm glad that you're talking about all this. I just wanted to actually ask you something regarding repercussions of actually having a voice and using it. Israel is a fairly influential state, and we have seen that the countries that actually stand up to it repeatedly become a target, and repeatedly they are actually, international media keeps on attacking them, and then they are badmouthed by various influentials as well. Pakistan, given that we are in a precarious situation already, and then seeing that Pakistan is not directly connected to Palestinian, neighborhood, what do you think would have actually led Pakistan to volunteer in this case? And how does it ensure that Pakistan does not face similar kind of consequences as I pointed out earlier?
Well, I think what Pakistan needs to do is to also align itself with the position taken by the OIC. The OIC is a group of excuse me, is a group of states which have a unanimous and a historically consistent voice on this. No matter if you consider that voice to be less effective, that thing apart. But the position remains that OIC member states have always taken this position very consistently, that this is a serious violation of international law. Well, now that where we are, there is obviously a possibility of repercussions to that, but that repercussions apart, Pakistan should raise the voice as the lead country. We are not saying that Pakistan should give call for people to join armed action or to render assistance to those who are suppressed. But we are saying Pakistan should raise the voice, and Pakistan is raising that voice. That voice then has to be eventually determined and supported by the political forces and the incoming new government which is coming in. They will have now the responsibility to steer a very clear strategy on this. Whether they want to be assertive, to what extent they wish to be assertive, and do they wish to align themselves with some other countries as well, or do they wish to take a legal course which is under international law, justifiable course. So that is something that the new government will also have to figure out, and I believe it is better that not only the government, sitting government, but rather the political forces and the political parties who are in opposition or who are with the government in the coalition, they should in the parliament debate this issue, and so that the people of Pakistan are well aware of the contours, of the effects, repercussions, and the benefits, if any, of where to take this issue and how to carry this forward, and make a very stated position, like the Saudi government has given a very straightforward position on that. Do we want to go down that route, or do we wish to do that? Should be politically consensus-based position, which should come out in next few weeks, if not few months.
Absolutely, and but that is very prudent course of action. Now, let us also unpack the possibility or the scope of legal, international laws impact on Israel. So far, what we have seen is no sanctions on Israel, all sanctions on either Palestinians or the UN body that actually caters to the relief efforts in Palestinian areas, particularly Gaza. What exactly is the scope of this whole proceedings? Is there a possibility that if Israel is finally found by this court in breach of international law, particularly genocide law. Do you think that there is a possibility that other countries that have been so far supporting it might actually think about sanctioning Israel, sir?
And also add to that, we of course know that the ruling will not be binding, and of course there is an understanding that it's going to add pressure and of course make things difficult for Israel and countries supporting it as well. But how much of that will actually take place, especially given the fact that the interim order also came out as a big deal, and it was celebrated, of course, by South Africa and other countries that were taking this stance. But at the end of the day, nothing really happened on ground. There was no ceasefire, and we lost more lives.
Well, yes, that is an issue because obviously Israel is supported by the U.S. government, and it receives support by some very important European countries. So, 2 or 3 countries amongst the permanent 5 in the UN Security Council extend support to Israeli policies. Israel has its own version of things. It considers that the hospital it bombs are eventually used as military military installations and the underground bunkers and so on and so forth. But all those things apart, the means and methods that the Israeli forces are using, the killing of the children, the killing of the elderly, killing of the women, killing of the non-combatants, is not justifiable on any pretext whatsoever. So that is the context in which the ICJ has given its view. Obviously, as you noted, this view could be, even if it is binding in nature, the question is, can it be forced on Israel? The forcing mechanism is through UN Security Council again. And again, unfortunately, we will be seeing a possibility of a political veto by 1 or 2 of the permanent 5 countries. Now, in those circumstances, I believe that important responsibility is on the neighboring countries, because the neighboring countries and all other countries have a general responsibility. Another mechanism that could be that one can look at is the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is yet another body which has come up in the last few years to look into matters of this nature, because such matters also obstruct international trade and tranquility.
Right, but Ahmer Sahib, last question. If the enforcement is something that is under question, and what we're looking at is the possibility of veto, whatever the ruling is, then I want to understand what really is the contribution that this ruling is going to give to the people of Palestine. What support will they achieve out of this? What avenues will this ruling open for other countries to take action? I just want to understand then, if even if the ruling comes out against Israel, what is the cause for celebration then?
Well, obviously, the cause for celebration is that their viewpoint that Israel is committing genocide, something which Israel was denying, which is something that even U.S. government was partially denying. That position has been reaffirmed. That has been recognized as a position of fact on the ground. So that's a pretty serious recognition of an admitted position, something that was controversial initially, at least from the Western perspective. Now, what needs to be done is basically a political choice. If the countries closer to that, or any other country, considers appropriate, it is a case of intervention to intervene to save the lives. You have humanitarian intervention argument. We have what we call responsibility to protect doctrine. All these doctrines are out there, but now you require a political, military, and a strategic intent to proceed further. Now, that is something which is beyond law. Law has got nothing to do with it. If realities dictate different realities, then obviously there will be limitation of those actions. But if you ask from a purely international point of view, whatever has happened in Israel, in Palestinian areas, in the occupied areas, create a reasonable justification for intervention.
Right. Thank you very much, Bilal, Soofi, for joining us and sharing your insights with us. And thank you, Farrukh, for being part of the debate as always. And we really hope and look forward to the proceedings of the ICJ. And Pakistan, of course, is going to be contributing whatever it can to the situation and to end the suffering of the people of Palestine. And we hope that the ICJ also looks into the matter with this in mind, and that we're able to take action to help those that are suffering. That's all that we have from the debate. We'll now see you Monday.